Good morning and welcome. Take a deep breath and feel your body right now in this moment. With your hands, pull back with your buttocks and upper thighs so that your pelvis easily tilts forward, or more easily anyway, so that you're on a little bit the front edge of your sitting bones, not too far, but far enough that you feel some arch in your lumbar spine and the ability to lift up without straining your front hip muscles. So take your hands and just push down, either one at a time or both together, into the top of your thigh bones just before they come up into the hip socket to encourage the femur bones, the thigh bones, to really release down towards the floor. And that requires that your seat is high enough. You have enough blanket support or pillow support under your hips. Because for many reasons, we don't want to habitually carry a lot of tension in the front of the hips. It's uncomfortable, it's dangerous for the lower back, hips, and knees, and it is associated with stress. So when we release the thigh bones, there's a release of connections into these other joints and also a softening in your overall state of mind. That's why I like to do the front of the hips so often with the balls, because it does that for me. We're not going to do that today, but we do that technique a lot. So once the pelvis is tilting, lift up through the spine. Draw back with your shoulders slightly so you'll feel a tone in your upper back. Soften your neck and face, jaw. And again, feel your breath. So even though you're using muscles in your spine, your back body, to sit tall, let the breath flow and open up into your back body as well as your front. So we never use tone in a way that rigidifies the body or prevents us from feeling movement. And that's the delicacy of figuring out how much effort to exert in any activity or any yoga pose. We want to activate our strength and support whatever it is we're doing, but not to the extent that it closes off our ability to move that part of the body and also be sensitive to it. So again, feel your breath. And now let's chant our invocation. 3 times through with an Om at the beginning and an Om at the end. Take a breath in. Om. Om Chaitanyam Shashvatam Shantam Vyomatitam Niranjanam Narabindu Kalatitam Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Chaitanyam Shashvatam Shantam Vyomatitam Niranjanam Narabindu Kalatitam Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Chaitanyam Shashvatam Shantam Vyomatitam Niranjanam Narabindu Kalatitam Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha. So once again, feel the length of your spine and the ease of your breath. And then open your eyes. Circle your shoulders. We do this first just to be aware of all the movements that the shoulders can do and let some of the muscles that maybe are contracting habitually all the time, let them release. So again, sitting tall, shoulders back and down, turn your head left and right. And up and down. Okay, back to center. Touch the floor beside you with your right hand slightly in back. Just move it back 6 inches or so. Take your head to your left shoulder, looking straight ahead, and actively elongate the line between the top of your hand and your fingertips. And breathe, feeling the side neck muscles. And look down to get the back one. And look up to get the front one. And back and forth a couple of times. Back up to center, circle again. And anytime you can rub the side of your neck with your fingers just to kind of add to that release. And then the other side, reach to the side with your fingertips on the mat and slightly behind you. Take your head to your right shoulder, stretching the left side of the neck. And just stay there with a feeling of reaching into your fingertips and into the top of your head so that that whole line is getting an active stretch. And then look down. And look up. And then go back and forth from down to up slowly. And back to center, circle again. And now the full curve and arch of the spine. So especially for today, really try to feel that each part of your spine and create the movement in each part of your spine evenly so that you're not leaving one part and not moving at all so that the other parts have to compensate. So that means the pelvic area, the lumbar spine, which is the waistline, the ribs, and that whole part of the spine, and then of course your neck. So lean back into both hands, lifting your chest and looking up. And then come forward again, using your arms for support so that the movement isn't very quick or forceful, but it's careful and gentle. And again, go back and forth a few more times. And then come back up and change the crossing of your legs. So we each have a favorite side to put in front. And it's good to recognize how it affects your pelvis and your lumbar spine. Because there isn't, by nature of this position, there's somewhat of an uneven, effect on your hips. So whichever is your habitual one is comfortable for some reason. You can try to figure out what that reason is. But it's good to do both. So now pull the thigh bones into the hip socket and lift your spine as you inhale, and then draw into a twist to the right using your hands. One hand behind you, one hand on your knee. Pull with your hands, but also work strongly with your abdominal muscles. Keep breathing and keeping your head up over your pelvis as opposed to turning, dipping it down in any direction. Back to center. Inhale, exhale, turn, pulling the thighs into the socket, especially your left one, right one in this case, and turn your whole spine. Try to get each part from the navel up. Your lumbar spine will not have much rotation naturally, but from the navel up, you can rotate all the way up to the top of your neck, which has the most rotation of any part of the spine. And then go back and forth. So we try to loosen up the spine in all of its directions when we're about to do back bends. So now speaking of that, let's do a side stretch here. So widen your knees apart so that one foot and lower leg is in front of the other one rather than being stacked on top. Let's start with a stretch of the right side. So put your left hand out on the mat, raise your right arm up and turn the palm off to the left. So this is a rotation of the arm that we'll talk about more. And then carefully, using your other hand for support, carefully lengthen the spine all the way from the upper spine, your neck, down into your ribs, down into your waist. And the rib area is the one that has the most sideward bend, so you probably feel that. Touch the floor with your right hand, stretch up with your left arm, face the palm of your left hand over to the right, and then reach, feeling the stretch all the way down your spine. Maybe you feel it more in some places than others, but just do the pose with the intention of stretching each part. And then one more time each side. Nice big arcing movement of your arm. And back to center. Great. Okay, so now let's go down onto the balls on the front of the shoulders. And let me explain particularly our focus doing this today. So we're going to have a couple of poses where your arms go up, and I'm going to focus today on 2 poses where only one arm will go up. So let's practice that now. Take your arms to the sides and turn the palms up, and that's outer rotation of the whole arm, and then turn the palms back, and that's inner rotation of the whole arm. However, we have these amazing elbow joints that lets us do 2 different rotations in one arm. So keeping the biceps muscles facing up, turn your palms down. So you've done external rotation with the upper arm and internal rotation with the bottom of the arm from the elbow down to the fingers. So we do this a lot in yoga. And I want you today to be particularly aware of the outer rotation of your upper arms. Now bring one hand down and release it, but keep the other hand, arm out to the side with the biceps muscle facing up. And then bring it up next to your head. Palm is going to be facing to the side, the opposite side. And then bring your other hand up and do more external rotation with your hand on that upper arm so that the biceps faces back and the triceps face forward. So that's increasing the natural amount of rotation we have, just so you feel it. Now, the reason I'm saying this now is that in doing that, we're stretching this pectoralis major muscle where we're about to use the balls on that area. So that muscle has to release a little bit to let you go up and turn your arm that way. If it's tight, it's going to be restricting your shoulder, and you won't feel it in the pectoralis major. You won't say, oh, that's what's restricting me. You'll probably feel it in the joint or some other part of your arm. So let's do it with the other side. So you have your arm out to the side, palm facing up, and the biceps facing up. The whole arm is in external rotation. And then you bring your arm up next to your head, as close to your head as you can, or within a few inches. And then grasp your whole upper arm with the other hand. So you're wrapping your fingers around and turning the arm more with your hand so that the triceps faces forward and the biceps face back. So, and make sure you're going in that direction, not the other way, because in this case, that's external rotation, which may seem like it's internal because of the arm coming closer to your head, but it's not. It's external rotation. Okay. Circle again. And now let's lie down on the balls to get the pectoralis a little bit more open. So you've got the larger balls. I'm using the easy grip, but we also have a bigger one that'll work just fine too. Come down onto your stomach and put the balls underneath your pectoralis. We'll start in the middle today. Just in the interest of time, we're not going to do the spot that's closer to the midline. Start in the middle, so the balls are just really above each of your breasts. Rest your head on the floor and bring your arms to be off to the side with your elbows slightly bent. So the arms are making a very loose circle around your head. And then take some breath and release your body weight into the balls. And then begin to move slowly with your chest from side to side, so the balls roll across the pectoralis muscle. And then see if you can bring your arms up alongside your head, like we do in many yoga poses. In this case, you can have your palms facing down towards the floor. Continue to move side to side a few times. And now lift your arms very small amount away from the floor, just an inch or two, and move slowly between those two positions. One that you were just in is the arms extended out next to your head, reaching forward like you're about to do a dive. And the other one is the elbows bending and coming back alongside your head, so your arms are making a loose circle around your head. So with the arms slightly off the floor, you're going to go slowly from one of those positions to the other several times. And now let's move the balls out a little further towards the armpits and do the same thing. So once you get settled, you can start with your elbows in a loose circle around your head, your arms with your elbows bent, and move a couple times from side to side. And then bring your arms up next to your head and move side to side. And then go back and forth between those two positions with your arms slightly off the floor. Now, one more thing before we finish this, which is to stretch your arms out alongside your head, reaching them to be straight if you can, and turn your palms towards each other. So that's that external rotation that we'll be using later in the poses. And we're asking the pectoralis major to release enough to allow us to do that position with the arm overhead. Okay, now you can take those balls out and get the smaller ones and roll over onto your back. So we're going to go down through the whole spine, which means that you want to position yourself at the bottom end of your mat so you have room to go up towards the top. And you can have a block ready if you'd like to use a block for the top position of your shoulders. So put the balls under the upper trapezius. And today we'll do that same movement you just were doing when you were on your stomach. So you're going to start with your elbows bent and kind of loosely encircling your head and move side to side a couple of times. And then stretch your arms straight and move side to side a couple of times. And now, those of you who would like to, put the block under your hips. So again, with your arms bent, move your chest side to side. And then with your arms straight, move your chest side to side so your arms are reaching out alongside your head. This time the palms are facing up towards the ceiling so you can be more restful with your arms. And then let's go between those two positions, bend arms
and then straight arms. And just really feel what's happening where the balls are touching your shoulder muscles. Okay, now let's go down the back a little further, and I'm going to take the block out, but you can leave it in if you want. And we'll do our usual method from here on down, which is moving side to side, either with your elbows bent and resting your hands on your head so your elbows point straight up, or with your arms more extended out behind your head, or alongside your head with the palms facing up. So whichever arm position you choose. You can also cross your arms over your chest, but the movement here is going to be mostly with the torso, moving so that the balls go laterally across this part of your upper back between your shoulder blades. And they don't move very much, of course, because there's not much room between the shoulder blades. And now move down to the next spot. And then keep moving down a little more. So now you're probably at the bottom of your shoulder blades. We're going through the spine somewhat faster than we might do on other days because we spent some time on the front as well. And then continue down. So now you're below the shoulder blades. You're on the ribs and the spine that's between your shoulder blades and your waistline. And you're getting to the area where the diaphragm muscle, the breathing muscle, attaches to the back of the ribs and all the way around. But of course, you're pressing on the back part with the balls right now. Now, in this next section of your back, between shoulder blades and waist, I'm going to move, one spot at a time relatively quickly, but if there's a spot where you want to stay a little longer, then go ahead and do that. So I'm moving now down, so I'm close to the bottom of the ribs. This is a place where many of us have a lot of tension because it's the place that the back will bend forward most easily. So when we're in our daily life, we're using it all the time to bend forward and come back up again. Picking up something or leaning over to clean off your kitchen table or whatever. And so those muscles get very tight and the back can get kind of stuck in that position. So the balls are challenging that and trying to get more movement between each of the vertebral segments here in the middle back. So now I'm moving down, so I'm just above my waistline. I'm below the ribs, and this is where the quadratus lumborum muscle comes into play, a very strong back support muscle. You can probably feel that it's a little bulkier than the muscles above, even though it's below, several other layers. And then move down to be either on your waist or slightly below your waist. And move slowly side to side. At this point, your pelvis will be moving in the other direction because those two places are so closely linked, pelvis and lower back. And once in a while, remember your breath, feel how it is. See if it's being affected by this ball work that we're doing. And now go down further so you're just a little below your waist. And move side to side. And then all the way down to the lowest spot on your spine before we get to the pelvis. And I like to stay still for a moment here because this area is so strongly supported by thick layers of fascia that I just want my lower back to have a chance to settle and release some of that protective tension. And then move side to side, a small amount, so your waist and ribs go to one side as your pelvis goes to the opposite side. And now we'll do 2 spots on the pelvis. First, the middle spot. So bring the balls, I use my hands, bring the balls down to the center of the buttocks. Lift your knees up towards your chest. And slowly move your legs side to side so that it creates more pressure on one ball at a time. And now let's move the balls down as low as you can and still feel that they're underneath your pelvis. So they're down near your sitting bones and your tailbone, kind of between the two. They're a little bit in from the sitting bones and above the sitting bones, but you can feel that your tailbone is right in between them. And you can choose whether to leave your feet on the floor or lift them up. For this one, I leave my feet on the floor because it helps tilt the pelvis in that direction so I get more weight on the balls. But you can experiment. And we're doing this because in back bends, we need to really lengthen the tailbone as a support for the length of the whole back. And it's just a reminder where that area is and what's going on there. All right, let's take the balls out.
Get ready for our warm-ups. So just pause for a minute to feel your back, maybe wiggle a little bit on the floor. And feel your breath. And remember that our focus is going to be to really get each part of the spine to move in cooperation with all the parts of the spine. Bring your knees into your chest and rock side to side. Back to center. Shake your feet up in the air. Circle your feet. And bend and stretch your legs, alternately between pointing your toes up and stretching your heels up. And then bring a block between your knees. Arms are stretched to the sides. Palms are facing up. And with your shoulders pressing down to the floor, go side to side with your legs. Working your stomach muscles while keeping a good length in your whole spine. I really like doing twists on the floor for that reason, especially, because it keeps the length of the spine and we can focus more on the strength that we're building in the stomach muscles. And back to center. Put the block to the side and spread your feet wide on the mat, arms alongside your head. Reaching back with the palms facing up this time. Bring the knee across to the other foot, but your left leg stays the way it was. The knee's pointing up, both feet are still on the edges of the mat, and you're reaching a long line from your waist to your knee and from your waist to your hand, the whole side body. Come back to center, left side. Knee comes across to the right foot, but the right leg doesn't do anything different. It just stays the way you started, with the foot on the edge of the mat and the knee pointing up. And then back to the first side. Add holding your hand with the other hand to increase that stretch. And
If you want, you put your left foot on top of your right knee to increase that lower stretch. And then second side. And back to center. Take a breath, feel your body. And now getting ready for the bridge pose, tuck your shoulders under. In this pose, we could also practice the 2 rotations of the arms. So we start with the whole arm in external rotation, which is that the biceps are facing up or even a little bit out to the sides, and the palms are facing up. That's external rotation of the whole arm. Press down with your feet, lift your chest, and tuck your shoulders under again. And then, if you decide to clasp your hands, you're doing it in a way that keeps the outer rotation of the upper arms, but turns the lower arms in, like we practiced earlier, in order to clasp your hands. But if that clasping of your hands means that your elbows get wider apart, I would recommend that you don't do it, that you keep your arms straight with the palms facing up. And come down onto the block. Take a moment to just appreciate the support of the block. And then take the right leg up, stretch it toward the ceiling, and bring the leg all the way down with the heel reaching away and the thigh pressing down. And you'll feel the pull across the front of your hip right away. Add to that by pulling up gently with your abdominals and your ribs. And this is part of any back bend. And then if you want to, you can lift your other knee toward your chest and straighten the leg up in the air a few times. Both feet flat. Bring the left knee up. Stretch it straight. And bring the leg down to the floor with the heel touching, the toes and the kneecap facing straight up. Press the thigh down and reach up gently with your abdomen and your ribs to create that length across the front of your pelvis on the left side. And then bring your right knee toward your chest. So this is the 2 legs pulling in different ways on the pelvis. But we have the support of the block to maintain good alignment as we do that. And then stretch up and down with the right leg if you want. You can leave the knee bent if you'd rather, or stretch it straight. And then place your feet flat. Take a few breaths. And take the block out. And let's do the belt stretch with the legs. Right leg goes up and you're holding the belt with your outstretched arms, shoulders remaining on the floor. Chest broad in the front. And actually move your shoulders down towards the floor a little more. So there, the arm bones are coming more fully into the shoulder socket. This is a good thing to practice before we do some of the back bends. And then pull on the belt, but also push the other way with your leg. And if you can straighten your left leg and keep it flat to the floor, then you should do that. And then breathe. Take the belt in your right hand, take the leg out to the side, turning the leg so that the toes point down and the heel comes up a little bit. That's external rotation up in your hip joint that's doing that. So feel it in the hip if you can. Keep your chest broad, other leg strong, left side of the pelvis staying on the floor. And come back across now, holding the belt with your left hand. As the leg comes across, you actively widen through the hips, which means your right hip moves off to a diagonal to the right and your left hip pushes into the floor. And you may not even observe that movement with your eyes, but you can feel it. Okay, take the belt off, move your hips to the right and bend the right knee across. coming into a twist with one long axis from your foot to your hip to your head, and your left hand gently increasing the twist by pulling on your knee. So you can rest the foot down on the floor or on your other leg, but I actually prefer to keep my foot lifted because it keeps my right leg more active. All right, back to center. Take a moment to breathe in the center and feel the energy in the whole right side of your body. And then take your left leg up with the belt around your foot. Again, remember now we're pulling the arm bones down towards the floor at the top, so the shoulders are more fully on the mat, but you're still reaching up to hold the belt. So the arms don't have to bend or shrink in order to engage into the shoulder sockets. You can do both. You can engage the arms into the shoulders and reach them long through the fingers, or in this case, the hand. And then push with the belt, pull with the belt and push with your leg, creating as much stretch as seems right for today, and breathe. And then turn the left leg out as you take it to the side, holding the belt with your left hand. So that external rotation, you might notice it visually in your foot, but it starts at your hip. The other hip stays on the floor, your chest remains broad. And roll your head side to side anytime. And then come back up. And then cross the leg over, holding the belt with your right hand. And widen your pelvis so that the left hip pushes out to the left and slightly upward at a diagonal, and the right hip pushes into the floor downward diagonal. All right, and back to neutral, and take the belt off. Move your hips to the left, straighten your right leg, and move your left bent knee across the midline. So you can either rest the foot on the other leg or keep it in the air so that there's some effort contained in the leg to do that. Stretch the whole axis of the twist from your foot to your pelvis to your head, and gently ease that bent knee across further with your hand. Feel your breath. And then slowly come back to center. Okay, let's come over and actually come up to standing for a moment. We're going to review the rotations of the legs the way we did for the arms. So turn one leg out to the side so your toes point to the side, and know that that's happening in your hip. And then bring your foot back to neutral, and then turn it in towards the other foot. And again, that's internal rotation starting from the hip. And do the same with the other side. External rotation, toes point to the side. Internal rotation, toes point inward. Now we're going to do those rotations with the feet not moving, because this is what happens in many yoga poses. So even though you won't get as much rotation, you will feel something going on in your hips. You'll feel the rotation. You'll feel the effect on your pelvis. So now turn in both legs using the muscles way up at the top of the hip, as if you were really going to be able to turn your toes towards each other, one foot towards the other foot. But you don't move your feet. You're just moving from the hips. That will probably make you lean forward a little bit, stooping forward over your pelvis. Then what you do is take the tailbone down right through the middle of the pelvis, because you've created some width and it has more room now to go down. And as you do that, the legs will turn a little bit outward because of the muscles you're using, and they'll be back in neutral. So you might say, why did we do this if we just end up back in neutral? Why we do it is that those controls of the thigh bones into the hip socket are so beneficial for the hips, the sacrum, and the lower back. So even though it may seem like we ended up in the same place we started, you've engaged muscles that support the body in a really beneficial way. Internal rotation and widening comes first,
And then a little bit of external rotation and lengthening through the sacrum. Now let's go down into plank pose with the forearms. Clasp your hands, elbows under the shoulders. Tuck your toes under and lengthen each leg. And then push down with your arms and pull back a little bit with your arms on the sticky mat. And you'll feel your front spine getting longer, your chest coming towards your hands. And take some breath with that. And then tuck your toes under and lift up your hips so you're in plank pose. And let's do the rotations here because there's no weight going straight down into your legs, so it's a little easier. Turn your legs in so the heels get wider, and then turn your legs out enough to come back to neutral and lengthen your tailbone without letting your pelvis drop forward. And come down. And then cobra pose. Point your fingers straight ahead, elbows are still under your shoulders. Lengthen your front spine and then push down into your hands, especially your fingertips, as you come up. The tailbone presses down, the legs stay in neutral rotation, meaning the toes and the kneecaps are facing straight down. Try not to turn out your legs here. Keep some internal rotation as a safety factor. And then lift up your gaze a little bit. Couple of breaths. And come down. Move your hands back a little bit so they're next to your head. Shoulder blades pulled together, legs stretch back, and come up into cobra number 2. So you won't get up as high as you could to straighten your arms, but you're coming up higher with your pelvis. You probably feel that your lower belly is a little more involved here, lifting up away from the floor. And then come back down. And we're going to do a series of 3 cobras moving with the breath. And I encourage you to go a little higher if you can, safely, not having any pain in your shoulders or your lower back, so that your pubic bone comes just a little off the floor when you get to the peak of the pose. So that's a suggestion. You can give it a try and see how it feels. Prepare by pulling your shoulder blades together and stretching back through your legs. Inhale, rise up. And exhale, come down. Inhale, rise up. Exhale, come down. One more time. Inhale, rise up. And exhale, come down. And then fold back into child's pose. Knees are wide, toes are together, and your head is resting on a block or your folded hands. Okay, now let's do down dog. And we'll be coming into plank so you can get your blocks ready. Place your hands towards the edge of the mat with the fingers slightly turned out. And in dog pose, when we're weight bearing with the arms, the upper arms turn out so the biceps face forward. But of course, we can't turn our lower arms out because we need the hands to be on the mat. So here's another pose where the upper arms are doing the outer rotation and the lower arms are doing the inward rotation. Widen your pelvis, tuck your toes under, inhale and lift your knees and reach up through the sitting bones. And again, with the feet staying straight ahead, broaden your hips, which is associated with a widening of the pelvis, plus also the internal rotation of the hip joint. And then lengthen your tailbone and let the knees come back to neutral so they're in line with the toes. And then straighten one leg at a time. Back to full dog pose with both legs straight. Remember your fingertips. Keep pressing into the fingertips. And then come forward to a full arm plank, holding steady with your pelvis so it doesn't sag downward, and also not rounding your shoulders or your ribs up towards the ceiling.
So you're trying to get the ribs to move slightly down and the pelvis to move slightly up.
And then come back to back pose. And forward to plank. Bring your knees to the floor and walk in with the blocks. And bring your right foot forward on the mat. So getting ready for lunge, you check that your pelvis faces the end of the mat and that you have a wide enough stance between your 2 feet because you know we're going to do some balancing here. So come up with a straight leg in the back, your front knees over the ankle pointing toward the toes, and you elongate your spine. And then drop your back knee down, maybe to the mat, maybe not that much, a few times. And then bring the blocks on the inside of your right foot. Bring the whole left foot down onto the floor and come onto your right heel so that you're stretching your hamstrings on the right side. Now we have hamstrings that are more on the inside of the leg. To get to those, we turn the leg in. And then we have a bigger hamstring muscle on the outside edge, so we turn the leg out to get to that one. So you're doing this rotation of the hips intentionally to find the different parts of the hamstrings. And then bring the blocks a little further forward on the mat and bring your back knee down to the floor. Step your right foot an inch or 2 further to the side. Pull back with your hip muscles for support so that they're engaged and not allowing your body to just kind of flop forward. There's some control in the pelvis. And then bend forward enough to bring your forearms to the blocks. You don't have to drop your head down. You can keep it in line with your spine. And rock a little bit back and forth, feeling the stretch of the inner thigh. Okay, let's do all that stuff on the left side. So step your left foot forward, right leg back, and adjust the back foot to be a little bit wide so that you can really feel the width of your pelvis. And then extend your spine forward and breathe. And drop the back knee down a few times. And then straighten up, bring the blocks to the right side of the mat, step your left foot to the left, and come up onto the left heel with your right foot totally down on the mat now. And then slowly turn the leg in and out to feel the rotation of the bone in the socket and the stretch of the different parts of the hamstring. And then look towards the front of the mat again. Bring your right knee to the mat and pull back slightly with your hips. Then come forward onto the blocks with your forearms and walk the left foot out to the left a little bit for the grasshopper pose. Gently rock forward and back with your hips, not very far, just a few inches. And then come back and let's do a down dog to finish up this section. One more down dog. This time for down dog, take your feet a little wider than usual. And again, keeping your feet and ankles steady in their parallel position. Broaden your hips so that the hips turn in a little bit. And then turn out the legs slightly. So one image I like to use is the side of your knees. Move back a little bit. And then keeping your stance wide, walk forward to the front, to the middle of your mat. Bend your knees and lean your forearms into your thighs. And inhale, stand up. Okay. Let's do Gomukhasana arms, which involves big external and internal rotation of the arms in the sockets. So bring a belt and put it around your right shoulder, over your right shoulder. Bring the arm up the way we did earlier, with the palm facing at first in toward the midline, and then see if you can turn more so the palm faces backwards and you use your other arm to help turn the arm more. So when you turn the arm, it brings the triceps closer to your face and the biceps to face more back behind you. Bring your hand down to clasp the belt. Other arm goes to the side with the palm facing back, so that's internal rotation of the shoulder. And then bring that arm in and either hold the belt or hook your fingers. Breathe as you lift up that top arm and then turn to the wall. Lean the wall, upper elbow into the wall, keeping your head and arm close together, and pull your hips back a little bit to add to the stretch of the triceps. Okay, back up and other side. So remember, we did the balls on the chest earlier in the class, and that is meant to help us bring the arm into this externally rotated position right next to the head. So do that and turn the upper arm more using the help of your other hand. So you grasp the whole upper arm, it's fairly close to the shoulder. Turn it so the biceps goes more backward and the triceps more forward. Hold on to the belt. Bring your other arm to the side with the palm facing back. So that arm is in internal rotation. And then bring it in and walk up the belt to grasp the belt or hook your fingers together. Pause for a moment just to feel it. And then lean into the wall with your upper elbow. So there's a good chance that you're not symmetrical in this stretch because most of us have a dominant arm, and that arm is going to be tighter right around the shoulder joint. So just notice that. So right now your left arm's in external rotation, your right arm's in major internal rotation. Okay, release, circle your shoulders. Okay, now we'll do a simple standing back bend. So I'm going to give you the choice of clasping your hands or putting your hands on your hips. They could be on the sides of the hips or even the back of the hips. So the first step is to lift your chest, remain steady on your legs, and pull your shoulder blades towards each other, which pulls the arm bones back. Next step, lift your chest even more, so you're engaging more of the upper back muscles. But don't push your hips forward if possible. So you can do as best you can to keep the hips over your feet. Lift your chest, move your jaw back a little bit so that you keep length and strength in the front of your neck and the back of your neck, and then look up and see if you can talk. Because we need the support of the neck muscles in the front to keep the throat open. Otherwise, we're doing too much extension or bending in the back of the neck. Okay, come on up. Good, now we'll do wide leg poses that don't involve back bending for a little bit of a break of the back bending. Bring the blocks to each side of your mat. Take a wide stance. But in these poses, we're going to be practicing the rotations of the legs and the arms. Turn the right leg out. The left leg is neutral, but in essence, it's turning in a little bit just to stabilize this pelvic position. So your pelvis is slightly turned towards the right. Your left leg is slightly turned in and pulling back. Inhale, raise your arms, first with the palms up, which is external rotation of the whole arm. Then, like we did earlier, turn the palms down. Inhale, exhaling, bend the right knee and check visually and also through feeling it that the knee is directly over the ankle. And then with your spine lifting up, is a very dignified pose, strong warrior, gaze to the right. So the warrior is about to move quickly to the right. We're not going to do that, but that's the image of the intensity of this pose. The warrior is going to travel in that direction. Now bring your forearm to your thigh. Roll the left shoulder back. And again, feel the rotations of the legs now So the right leg is definitely an external rotation, the left leg slightly an internal rotation. So you can keep your hips wide. And then bring your right hand onto the block, roll your left shoulder back, bring the arm up, and bringing it over the ear, take the biceps back and the triceps forward, which we've been practicing in several other poses. The palm in this case ends up facing down. Stretch from your pelvis into your top hand and from the pelvis into the back leg. And then give a little pulse to come up. Turn your feet parallel. Turn the left leg out. Pause to feel now the two different rotations that are going on in your legs. Left leg is turning out, right leg is slightly turning in. Tailbone lengthens. Inhale, raise your arms, palms facing up. And let's take the arms a little bit back behind us in this time, this side. Turn the palms down. And now bend your knee, the left knee coming right over the ankle, pointing toward the toes. And that requires that external rotation of the front leg. So if you need to, you can turn your pelvis a little bit more towards that side. And then gaze to the left with a feeling of power and exuberance, but also steadiness. Okay, and then bring your left forearm to your thigh. Push the thigh with your arm a little bit so it turns out more. Roll your right shoulder back. And then coming down with your hand onto the block or your foot. Bring the other arm up. Turn the palm towards the direction of your left side. And take it over your ear. Remembering how we practiced that the upper arm is turning out, meaning that the biceps is facing back behind you. Straighten your elbow if you can and really reach through your fingertips. And inhale, come up. Turn the feet forward, pause, and then walk your feet together. All right, now we're going to do Warrior One using the back of the chair for support so that we can focus on the hips and the shoulders and the spine and not worry about the balance. So we're going to do one arm at a time going up. Okay, so facing the back of your chair. Step your right foot forward, left foot back. Left leg is slightly turned out with the pelvis facing directly toward the chair. And then bend your front knee, tracking it carefully to face the toes. Touching the chair lightly with your fingers. Widen your pelvis, which takes the pelvis back a little bit. And then tuck the tailbone down so that you use a little bit of external rotation as you come into that position of strength to support the rest of your spine in the back bend. Now keep your hands touching the chair as you create a good back bend, like cobra pose, lifting up your spine, shoulder blades pulled together, head first goes back from the jaw area, and then the top of the head. You're still touching the chair because we're focusing on the back bend here. And now look forward and bring your left arm up next to your head. No, I've changed my mind. Let's bring the right arm up next to the head. Turn so that the arm so that the palm faces in towards the midline and the biceps muscles face back. Inhale, lift, and reach with your hand as you create that back bend again, with one arm going back, but the other arm stabilizing you. All right, let's do the other side. Left leg forward. Step the right foot back and turn it out very slightly. You're facing the chair with the support of your hands on the top of the chair back. Bend your left knee. Let's lean forward on this side towards the chair a little bit, putting more weight into your hands. And feel that rotation in the hips, in which the lower legs don't change, but the rotation of the hips happens to bring the sitting bones back and apart. Then draw your tailbone down, and the outsides of the knees will move back a little bit so that there's more external rotation. Bring your hips toward the chair. So this time you're going to raise your left arm up, but first let's do the back bend. So with both hands touching the chair, lift your spine up out of the pelvis, shoulder blades pull together, jaw reaches back, top of the head reaches back. So you're doing a big back bend, just like Cobra, and trying to keep your back legs straight with the heel pushing down. Okay, and look forward. Pause to take a deep breath. And we're going to do that again, this time with the left arm coming up next to your head. No, let's see. Yeah, left arm is going to come up. Okay, so take part of the back bend. Come up just a little bit with your spine, tailbone rooting down. And then bring the arm alongside your head, palm facing in, biceps facing back. Lift your spine more and reach with your hand and the top of your head to back bend as much as you can. And make sure you can still talk. And come back up. Very good. Take a breath, standing on 2 feet, Tadasana. All right, now we're coming down to do 2 poses. Virasana, which is a basic seated pose with the legs turned in, and then Ustrasana, the camel pose. So for Virasana, you can take whatever block or pillow support you want. You will need a bolster for the next pose, so you might even want to just sit on the end of the bolster. So when you're sitting on the blocks, your feet are folded back alongside your hips. This is Virasana. And this is internal rotation from the hips. We're actually trying not to demand very much rotation of the knees at all. Most of the rotation happens up at the hips. And then the feet are pointing straight back. The toes are pointing straight back. And you can massage your feet a little bit with your hands. I like to make a soft fist and push down into the sole of the foot. And let's do a little twist here. Inhale, lift your spine. Oh, can you reach a block, another block? If possible, that will help. Lift your spine and turn to your right. So in this position, your pelvis won't turn. It's protected by the way your legs are folded. So the turn happens from the waist up. And then we'll go to the other side. So lift your spine and turn to your left. Okay, back to center. And now we're going to come up and stand on the knees. So if you want to add any kind of blanket support or soft thing under your legs, you can do that. And we're going to put the bolster over the ankles. So point your toes back, your feet and your knees are both hip width apart. And put the bolster right up on top of your lower legs, down towards the feet, so it's on your ankles. So we'll do the pose the regular way with both hands touching the bolster first, and then we'll do it with one hand touching the bolster, the other arm overhead, the way we've been doing in other poses. So start by facing straight ahead. Isometrically widen the top of your thighs and pelvis. So that would be intending to push your legs apart, but they won't move because there's weight on your knees. And that makes space in the pelvis from left to right. So then you have more room to tuck your tailbone down and lift your front belly. So that tailbone down is going to rotate the sides of the hips back a little bit, just naturally by the way the muscles work. Lift your front chest. Draw the jaw back, the base of your ears back. Shoulder blades are strong. And then reach back with one hand and then the other to catch the bolster. Notice that you're externally rotating your arms The fingers are pointing back. Then lift your chest more as you take the head back. So notice when you have a higher support for your hands, there's more opportunity to lengthen the upper and the middle back. All right, come up, look straight ahead. Now we're going to take one arm up and reach the other arm back to the bolster. Inhale, lift your chest. Shoulder blades active on the back, squeezing in towards each other. Jaw comes back to tone the front of your neck. And then reach with the left hand for the bolster. With your right arm, come up. The palm is facing in towards the midline. The biceps are facing back. And then you reach, reach, reach with your hand as you go further into the back bend. Breathe. Make sure you can breathe and talk so your head is not dropping back too much. And then come up. And just do a few movements with your neck here. Any movements you want. And we'll do the other side. Inhaling, lift up your spine. Reach back with your right hand for the bolster. Bring your left arm up around the side of your head with the palm facing in and the biceps facing back. This is the same position we've been doing in many poses today. Lift even more. Take the jaw back and then take your whole head back, reaching with your fingertips, using the support of the bolster with your right hand. Reach your left arm as far back as you can and make sure you can still talk and breathe. And then come up. All right, let's do a child's pose now. So bring in a block. Bring your toes together and sit back. Now you're supported on the bolster, so you'll get a nice kind of cushion for your hips. And lean your head forward onto a block. So this version of child's pose will give a little extra stretch to your ankles, but less demand on your knees. And then take some nice deep breaths. And let's do one more thing while we're on our knees. Let's do the twisted child's pose, and then we'll be coming into Shavasana. So you can just leave the bolster there if you want. It doesn't do any harm. Walk your left hand forward, bring your right arm behind, pointing your fingers out to the side with the palm up. The side of your head goes on the floor, and you're twisting your spine with the help of the arms and the floor as resistance. Your hips can stay right up over your knees. And as you use your arms to help the twist, the right arm presses down and the left shoulder pulls back. Other side. Walk your right hand forward a little bit. Bring your left arm behind it and pointing off to the side with the palm up. Push down with your left arm into the floor and pull back with the right shoulder. And then come up, and now we'll do Shavasana, so you can take your favorite props for that. I think I'm going to use the bolster under my knees. So as you get settled, roll your legs in and out. Roll your arms in and out, so rolling the palms down and then the palms up. And then keep the arms with the palms up as you tuck the shoulder blades gently in towards the spine. And then roll your head left and right. And come back to center. And begin to take a few deep breaths to settle yourself into relaxation.
Be aware of the breath filling your torso in all directions. So we'll do one direction at a time to get into the feeling of that. So first, feel your breath elongating your spine from top to bottom. And that happens naturally because the movement of the diaphragm massages the spine to some degree. And you can feel, even though the breath doesn't go past the ribs, you can feel the whole lower spine responding to the wave-like motion of the breath. And then breathe from front to back, meaning that you allow your ribs to press gently into the floor so they expand into the back of the body and also into the front, which is easier because you're not lying face down, you're lying face up. But think of the expansion going as much as possible evenly into the back and the front of your ribs. And then into the sides. Each inhale widens your ribs. And then breathe with all those directions. Inhale more deeply now to bring back your awareness of the space around you, and you can begin to move. Bending your knees, roll to one side. And come up to sitting.
So today we focused on back bending with the added technical information and experience of the rotation of the arms and the legs. So I hope it was helpful to you. It's more of an anatomy focus here, but it really supports the health and safety of your hips and your shoulders when you're doing intense poses. Bring your hands together in front of your heart and we'll chant one Om. Take a breath in. Om. Thank you. Namaste.